I am Katie Gable, and I'm the Program Manager of Mobility Services with Livable Buckhead. And I just wanted to highlight a few weeks ago, some of you actually might have attended the Second Cup series that highlighted the State of Buckhead survey results, which was presented by our very own Denise Starling. And today you'll see a glimpse of how those survey results and other studies have really captured the impact of COVID-19. So I first want to just give a start of a little reminder of who Livable Buckhead is. In short, we're a nonprofit, local nonprofit rooted in sustainability with a mission to enhance the quality of life and the environment in our community. So in 2011, Livable Buckhead expanded from being just a transportation source or resource to incorporating all sorts of sustainability programming. So that includes all of the programs that you see on this slide today. So that's health and wellness, energy and water efficiency, waste management, green space building, and much more. So within this suite of programming, I focus all of my time, like we said, on mobility services. And that really concentrates on working with the community, employers, all the buildings on improving our air quality and reducing our traffic congestion. And that's really primarily through the use of alternative modes. And one of the most effective ways that we've been able to do this is through implementing programs and policies with employers on a company-wide level. So I want to say, to kick off the presentation, congratulations to everyone on making it through an entire year of the world's largest work-from-home pilot. It's been an incredible year, honestly, with ups and downs, and COVID-19 really uprooted our entire lives, our daily routines. But what has stood out the most to Livable Buckhead are really two main things, and that's the nearly universal move to remote work arrangements by all of our employers, as well as the reduction in traffic congestion. And so my main point throughout this whole presentation, and really what I want to get across to everyone, is that we don't want to lose sight of what we've learned through this pandemic pilot. And that's the benefit of these things. We've already done so much work to figure out what flexibility works for our companies. And so we don't want to lose that, and we want to use this time now to set this benefit up permanently. So to kick off the presentation, I'd like to get a feel for how everyone's experiences has been over the past year regarding specifically these two items. So I'm gonna pull up my first poll question. And that question is, when you have gone into work over the past year or traveled really anywhere, how did you get there? Did you drive alone? Did you take transit? Did you carpool, bike, or walk? Or have you solely been teleworking this entire time? So we'll give it a few seconds and allow everyone to put up an answer. And I think we'll give it maybe just another couple seconds. Seems like most people have answered. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. And we're going to share the results with everybody. And it looks like, so kind of what I thought, when you have gone somewhere or gone into work, you've driven alone, and a few of you have actually biked and walked, which we love to see. And a lot of people have just only been teleworking this whole time. And so my main point with this question is that really everybody on this call, I assume, has experienced the joy of very little traffic on the roads when you have gone somewhere over this past year. But that kind of reduction is definitely not going to last, especially if you continue to drive alone everywhere you go. And when people start going back to work, if they continue driving alone, we'll see even more congestion than we did before. And we're already seeing an increase in cars on the road. I'm sure everyone's experienced lately as more people get vaccinated. So I'm going to pull up my next question, and that is, how is your experience when you do work remote, if you are able to? Do you love it? Do you want to continue doing it all the time? Do you like it occasionally to kind of balance personal life and work life? Do you hate it? Or are you just not able to work from home? Some people just their jobs don't allow it. So we'll again give it a few seconds and let everybody answer.
Come on, we need a few more people to chime in there. Let's get closer to our number.
All right, I think we can go ahead and end the poll. Most people have answered and share that with everybody. And it looks like, yep, okay, so that's exactly what we're seeing across the board. Most everyone loves working from home, at least occasionally. And that's what we're seeing across the board. So what we're gonna see is that most people wanna keep flexibility in place at least some of the time. But we do also understand if your job just doesn't allow it, and that's an important note that employers need to keep in mind throughout this, is that not all job functions can telework, and not everybody wants to. So we can go ahead and close that poll. Okay, so you may be wondering why we're asking these questions, but these two items are directly related if you haven't already guessed. Now that people have broken the habit of driving alone to work every day, we need to find ways to lock in as much of that traffic congestion as possible. And we want to do that by encouraging employers and people to continue working from home at least some of the time. And today we're going to take a look at the ways to make that happen. But first I want to take a step back and remind ourselves of what the business community and most people thought of telework prior to this pandemic pilot. And while a handful of employers did have programs and policies in place, a lot of the larger ones, a lot of employers and businesses use telework primarily as a business continuity strategy. I'm sure everybody remembers the I-85 bridge collapse, snowpocalypse, and or the Super Bowl. And so that is one reason, or the main reason that employers had telework or a business continuity strategy in place for that. And on top of that, only about 20% of Buckhead employees were allowed to telework on a regular basis, maybe 1 or 2 times a day. So many businesses overall thought that telework was going to negatively impact their company's bottom line or their employee productivity. But then came March 2020, and all of these employers that had been so reluctant to embrace telework really took charge and put these technologies and new strategies in place because they had to. And they were able to create even more effective workplaces and remote work arrangements than we had ever imagined. And as experts, we really were very shocked. And the benefits that you see on this slide are really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much research and so many studies out there now that have taken polls on telework and surveys on telework. But most notable that I want to point out here is that 91% of employers, CEOs actually, say that they believe a company attracts more talent when allowing remote work. And that's huge. If you haven't already heard, the talent war is coming, and telework and remote work is going to be a huge benefit to companies in the future. And another important highlight for us, especially at Livable Buckhead, is that employees are just happier overall in general, and not just because they have a better work-life balance, but because they're saving so much time and money from their lack of commute. And as we all know and have all experienced, I'm sure, is the stress from a commute can really affect our productivity, our happiness, and our overall lives. But with the benefits come the challenges. So if you don't know, the current conditions of working remote are not normal. Telework, this is not normal telework. Yes, we have all been incredibly resilient and everyone has stayed so productive throughout this time, which is awesome. But we've also been working during a global pandemic. Most of us have experienced virtual schooling with our kids, and there's been so much economic uncertainty that it's put increasing worries and stresses on all of us. And on top of that, leadership, managers, and employees, everyone are missing the social interaction and all of the creative collaboration that comes with being in the office. However, what we want to point out is that these challenges aren't permanent. We are already seeing a life that's more like a pre-pandemic normal. Students are going back to school, and employers are allowing employees to come back into the office if they haven't already been open. Can you imagine how productive employees could be if they were working under some sort of more normal conditions? So that's incredibly huge that we want to point out. And our research and data are showing that employers actually do believe that it can last and that it can work in the future, and that telework is here to stay. Even 69% of executives from Georgia Community Options regional survey said that more employees will be allowed to work from home periodically. But we know that the office is going to remain an integral part of the business community. The ideal future is probably going to be a balance between in-office and at-home schedules. And this is going to lead to a more flexible workplace. National and international companies are realizing that the ability to offer both of these things to their employees is going to be a huge benefit to them. And that is just even brings back to the talent war that we know is coming. But the future is now. And that is now is the time to plan your strategy. And that is our major point for today, is that now is the time to set your workforce up for success, to create the necessary change. And it's not time to wait. I read a few days ago that a recent PwC survey found that companies are not planning, a third of companies are not planning their strategies for the return to the office. They're just going to go with the flow and completely go back to normal. And that is just insane to our organization. We've learned so much from this past year, and we don't want to give it up. And so it's time to take advantage of these lessons and put strategies in place now to do that. And if you aren't planning your strategy, now is the time. But I bet you're wondering, why now? And that's because we're already seeing occupancy rise at a noticeable rate, with some of our commercial office buildings already reaching 30 to 40% occupancy. And that's a huge climb in the recent months. And we also know that you've seen before from our State of Buckhead survey that almost 3/4 of our Buckhead workforce, our local community, want to keep flexibility in place. And even with our poll results from this morning, most people love that flexibility. And they want to at least be able to telework 1 to 2 days a week. And many businesses are planning ahead. They are taking the steps to make this happen and create this new normal. One of Buckhead's largest companies, as an example, Salesforce, I'm sure we're all familiar with them, used the feedback from multiple employee surveys that they've been doing over the past year to collect feedback. And that feedback has provided a insight into a new hybrid work model for their workforce. And that really incorporates 3 new ways for their employees to work. And that's flex, fully remote, and office-based. And on top of that, we're seeing other local firms also update their pre-pandemic policies. And so they will also be allowing employees to work from home at least 1 to 3 days a week. But what I'm really here to talk to you all about today is how to make this happen and how to plan for a strategy that works for your company. And in order to do this, we have to be proactive. We can't just sit back and let it happen how it's going to happen. We have to create a structure that supports both of our business and our employees. And we have to be intentional about that approach. But I bet you think this process is going to be kind of difficult, but the process is going to be easier than you think. Remember, I've been harping on this whole time. You've already done half the work. You already know what types of flexibility work for your company if you've been working from home most of this year. So essentially, the core steps in creating a sustainable hybrid work model for the long term include defining what flexibility means at your organization, addressing the common challenges and employee needs, identifying the job roles and tasks that are most suitable for remote work and telework in the long run, and lastly, integrating key elements that support a hybrid workforce. So we're going to get into these steps a little bit today. So first, defining what flexibility is going to mean at your organization. And typically, flexibility in the work environment is associated with 2 main ideas: time and location. Flexibility in time has historically been an agreement between an employer and an employee on specific core hours or a daily time frame that they need to be in the office. So this has really allowed employees in the past to avoid peak PM and peak AM commute hours. And most of us, I believe, are probably pretty comfortable with this idea and have been doing it for a long time. But another association that has come out, really been birthed out of the pandemic, is this idea of employee shifts or grouping employees to come in together on specific days. So we believe that this is going to really allow for that collaboration to come back while keeping the hybrid workforce and flexible workforce in place, is specifying days that departments or teams need to be together on the same days to be able to collaborate.
Hey. How'd Mike's
So
surgery go?
Flexibility and location can take a couple different shapes. On one hand, flexibility and location can apply to an employee who might have the ability to work in the office one day, work at home one day, or from another satellite office, or even co-working space. But on the other hand, flexibility and location can apply to where an employee lives. So that can mean that a company has an ability to hire an employee who lives in a different city or even a different state. So, and actually nationally, we're seeing this happen where large companies like Google and Facebook and other large tech firms are announcing plans that they're going to allow employees to work from home indefinitely. While this is rare, we are seeing, and we have seen it somewhat on a local level. Recently, a medium-sized employer that's headquartered in Buckhead actually decided to shift their entire operations to a fully remote workforce and has actually subleased out some of their office space. But primarily, they were able to do that because they had policies in place prior to the pandemic that supported that effort, and then they had a positive experience during this time as well. So once you have defined what flexibility means for your workplace, the next step is to identify and address the challenges that your employees face with remote work. What you need to do, what we all need to do, is listen to our employees, talk to each other, have one-on-one chats with them, survey them, similar to what Salesforce has done. We need to understand what employees' challenges are. And while we have found common challenges throughout our research and our discussions with employers, there will be unique challenges with each of your companies. And these flexible programs, a keynote is that these flexible programs are not a one-size-fits-all. Each individual company will have to figure out what challenges are unique to their employees and evolve their solutions to meet their new demands. Now, step 3 is to identify which roles and tasks are suitable for remote work, really for the long term. But here, remember, here is where your pandemic pilot program has really able to come into play. You've already been doing the work. You already know what works for everyone. You've deployed this whole system, and you've probably developed a good sense of which tasks are better done at home without the office distractions, which tasks are better done in the office with in close proximity to your coworkers. And likewise, as I mentioned earlier, some people may not be well suited to remote work, either because of their job tasks or they just aren't comfortable with it. Employers are going to have to factor in considerations such as their employee experience level as well as preferences. And assessing these roles and tasks will really give you a 3-tiered classification system, is what we're calling it. And that's going to include remote workers, flex workers, and traditional workers. And now we'll be diving into the definitions of these on the next slide, but I wanted to highlight another example of a local employer that we've seen announce their plans for their future work model, and that's Full Story. And in September, they announced that they are going to be allowing a permanent hybrid work model similar to Salesforce, and that's going to let employees either work from home, work in the office, or have some blend of the two, and that's going to be based on the employee preferences and what feels most comfortable to them. So, Livable Buckhead believes that most employees, specifically in our Buckhead community, will fall into this middle flex worker category, and that's going to be a lot of employees working from home, maybe 1, 2, 3 days a week. But you'll have to answer questions that are specific to your company, such as which of your employees will be able to do their entire jobs from home with little interaction, which job roles really need time for in-person collaboration, or how many employees need to be in the office every day to fulfill their job functions. So these classifications will really help further define what strategies best fit your company. So lastly, there are supportive elements that need to be implemented in order to create a sustainable hybrid workplace. And we've identified these 5 supportive measures here, but I'm sure your companies will each have more issues and measures that you need to address. And for today's presentation, we're not going to get into the weeds of each of these, but I wanted to give a couple examples of a couple of them. And now more than ever, something that I want to put in everyone's head is that managers are now not only responsible for managing employees' work lives anymore, and things are changing. Managers are now responsible also for employees' overall mental health and well-being. And as we've already seen, keeping employees connected and engaged is a top concern with regards to remote work. Companies will have to use different means and new ideas for keeping these employees connected and engaged with each other. And so that can take many forms, but such as like team challenges and other virtual activities that everyone can be a part of. And Livable Buckhead's community events that we host annually, such as our Walk Challenge, is another example of how remote workers and office-based workers can really come together, be on a team together, focus on that team bonding, and really stay connected and get to know each other. Another element of supporting a flexible workplace is this idea of a suite of options employees have to get to the office. Now, I'm going to be circling back to the beginning of our presentation. And remember that we discussed why continuing remote work is going to be a major solution, a part of the solution, I should say, for keeping our traffic reduction down. However, it is not going to be the only solution. One of the main reasons that employees want to keep teleworking is because they're saving so much time and money from not commuting every day. So why should we not help them keep as much time and money saved as possible? Because Livable Buckhead believes that most employees will be in this flex worker or middle category, we need to provide them with the support that makes a flexible, stress-free commute an option. So Livable Buckhead helps employers put in programs that make using alternative modes easier. However, in the past, most of these programs have been geared towards traditional office workers who have to come into the office every day, who need a monthly parking pass or a monthly transit pass. But as this presentation and our research has shown us, the workforce is changing. We're going to keep flexibility in place, and we're going to need more flexibility when we come into the office. And what we don't want, and what we definitely don't need, is for everyone to drive alone to work when they do go into the office. This flexibility in commuting is going to be different for every employer and each employee, but there are some solutions that make sense for everyone. And that could look like daily or part-time parking passes, 10 or 20 trip transit passes instead of the monthly, Uber or Lyft credit to use as backup, stipends for people who bike and walk or carpool, and many more options. So in a world that provides all of this new flexibility, in turn is going to need to provide more options for our employees. And through our research, we have found, and we know that that can lead to increased employee satisfaction and happiness. And so what we want you to know today is that you are not alone. All of these employers are making these decisions. And if you're not, it is the time to do that. But we are here to help you. We can provide customizable materials and expert guidance, and we can really help you create a program and policies that are tailored to your workforce and your business needs.